should hear it over here.
We better do that. Try it, please.
Mark.
Bar 21. Bar 21.
Baruch atah.
Shema Yisrael. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchut Le'olam Va'ed.
The wireless. You have to read in the room? Yeah.
Adonai et Yaakov, ugealo mi'ar chazak mimenu. Baruch atah Adonai, Gal Yisrael. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת. לעשות את השבת לדורותם, ברית עולם. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת, שומרי שבת וקוראי עומד. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת, שומרי שבת.
Go on, Lee. Okay.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Yes, yes, there.
There are actually three pieces. There's the Ismaku, after the Kaddish.
Yeah, I'd like to open the doors.
Okay, can we just do a little bit of the instrumental training?
Yes, let me inquire.
I'm going to assume you're fine at the beginning of it.
Why don't we move towards
Can you
the,
give it to us starting on bar 7? Everybody ready to start on bar 7?
either try and get 5 minutes before?
Okay, so what I really need is stereo outline. Leave it off. Okay, it's working.
One, wa, 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 wa.
Is this off now, Mike? Or because I put it on here, but it doesn't.
Both of these now? Which one is that said? It is. It's a rabbi.
Testing. Hello. Test. Test.
Yeah, why don't you use this one? I don't know. It's possible to say. Yeah, you know.
multiferet velitila lechad dodi likrat kala pene Shabbat nekabela pene Shabbat nekabela לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה אוי ושלום עטרת בעלה גם בשמחה ובצהלה שבת נקבלה לך לקראת כלה נקבלה פני שבת נקבלה
O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness and of the impulse within us for justice and mercy, we pray that this hour of worship may be one of vision and inspiration. Help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter this sanctuary in search and in need, all who bring to this place the offering of their hearts. May our worship here lead us to fulfill our words and intentions with acts of kindness, peace, and love. Amen. We continue on the next page. Many are the generations of Israel, and in every age we have sought the living God through Sabbath rest and worship. This time and place hold the power to increase our joy in the eternal. O God, even as we seek you here in the sanctuary, help us to know that your glory fills all space. Make us understand that you are with us at all times if we but open our minds to you. We feel the presence of your Spirit in our homes and on our ways. We see the beauty of your creation in mountain, sea, and sky, and in the human form. We hear you in the silence of our own hearts, speaking the truths the heart knows. May we be your witness to the world, your messenger to all the earth. May we show forth your image within us, the divine spark that makes us human. We continue on page 70 as we all rise for the Baruch Hu. As day departs, as the dark of night descends, we lift our eyes to the heavens. In awe and wonder, our hearts cry out, Eternal God, how majestic is your name in all the earth. A vast universe, who can know it? What mind can fathom it? We look out to the endless suns and we ask, what are we? What are our dreams and our hopes? What are we that you are mindful of us? What are we that you should care for us? and yet within us abides a measure of your Spirit. You are remote, but oh, how near, ordering the stars in the vast solitudes of the dark, yet whispering in our minds that you are closer than the air we breathe. For you have made us little less than divine, and crowned us with glory and honor. With love and all we turn to you, and in the dark of evening we seek the light of your presence.
Baruch atah Adonai, Amari
O one and only God, you have made each of us unique and formed us to be united in one family of life. Be with us, Eternal One, as we seek to unite our lives with your power and your love. We proclaim now your oneness and our own hope for unity. We acclaim your creative power in the universe and in ourselves, the law that binds world to world and heart to heart.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'odecha. Ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha. V'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha v'vlechtecha v'aderech v'shochpecha uv'kumecha. Ukshartam leot al yadecha, v'hayu letotafot bein enecha, uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvish'arecha, lema'an tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai, v'hiyitem kedoshim lelohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem, asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, lihiyot lachem lelohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness, a world waiting still to be redeemed, give us, O source of good, the courage to say, there is one God in heaven and earth. The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and your love. From Egypt, the house of bondage, we were delivered. At Sinai, amid peals of thunder, we bound ourselves to your purpose. Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, we survived oppression and exile, time and again overcoming the forces that would have destroyed us. Our failings are many, our faults are great, yet it has been our glory to bear witness to our God and to keep alive in dark ages the vision of a world redeemed. May this vision never fade. Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one and at peace. Then we shall sing with one accord, as Moses, Miriam, and all Israel sang at the shores of the sea.
ראו בניך בוקע ים לפני משה זה לי אנו אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיער חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני
O God, let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up to find our hearts waiting to do your will. We praise you, guardian of Israel, whose love gives light to all the world. O God of Israel, may our worship on this day help us to grow in loyalty to our covenant with you and to the way of life it demands, the way of gentleness and justice, the path of truth and of peace.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ וביום השביעי שבת
Prayer invites God to let the divine presence suffuse our spirits. to let the divine will prevail in our lives. Prayer cannot bring water to parched fields, nor mend a broken bridge, nor rebuild a ruined city. But prayer can water an arid soul, mend a broken heart, and rebuild a weakened will. It is with that in our hearts that we rise for the tefillah. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Leah v'Elohei Rachel, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim v'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, U'Mevi Geula Livnei V'neihem L'ma'an Shmo B'Ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch Ata Adonai, Magen Avraham V'Ezrat Sarah. Your might, O God, is everlasting. Help us to use our strength for good. You are the source of life and blessing. Help us to choose life for ourselves and our children. You are the support of the falling. Help us to lift up the fallen. You are the author of freedom. Help us to free the captive. You are our hope in death as in life. Help us to keep faith with those who sleep in the dust. Your might, O God, is everlasting. Help us to use our strength for good. Ata kadosh v'shimcha kadosh u'kedoshim b'chol yom yahalalucha selah. Baruch Ata Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. You may be seated.
ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג. מקדשי שביעי כולם יספעו ויתענגו מטובך. והשביעי רצית בו וקידשתו. חמדת ימים אותו קראת
God of Israel, may our worship on this Sabbath bring us near to all that is high and holy. May it bind the generations in bonds of love and sharing, and unite us with our people in common hope and faith. And through Sabbath rest and worship, may we learn to find fulfillment and joy in the vision of peace for all the world. O God, you are with us in our prayer, in our love, and in our doubt. in our longing to feel your presence and do your will. You are the still, clear voice within us. Therefore, when doubt troubles us, when anxiety makes us tremble and pain clouds the mind, we look inward for the answer to our prayers. There may we find you, and there find courage, insight, and endurance. And let our worship bring us closer to one another, that all Israel and all who seek you may find a new strength for your service. Eternal source of good, we give thanks for the numberless gifts and blessings that fill our days, for life itself and its endless variety, for all that sustains body and mind, for love and friendship, for the delights of the senses, and for the excellence of your Torah, which deepens our life and enriches our days. Teach us, O God of wonders, to work for a just and compassionate society, where all may share your gifts in the joy of freedom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. O grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace, and give us the will to proclaim its message to all the peoples of the earth. Bless our country that it may always be a stronghold of peace and its advocate among the nations. May contentment reign within its borders, health and happiness within its homes. Strengthen the bonds of friendship among the inhabitants of all lands, and may the love of your name hallow every home and every heart. We praise you, O God, the source of peace. Baruch atah Adonai, Oseh HaShalom. Tonight, as is our custom, we ask God's healing presence be present for all those who are ill or who may be recovering from illness. And so I ask you now to call out the names of those whom you know who are ill tonight, who may be recovering, and whose good health we pray for this evening. We ask God's healing presence be with all of them, and indeed with all who are ill tonight. Mi sheberach avotenu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov ve'imotenu Sarah Rivka Leah v'Rachel. May the one who blessed our ancestors bless all those who are ill tonight. Ha'alei refuah shlema l'chol makotenu. May God grant a perfect healing for all their infirmities. May the comforting presence of the Shekhinah be with them. We ask, O God, that you bring them all to a perfect healing. Baruch atah Adonai, Rofeh HaCholim. Praised are you, O Eternal One, healer of the sick. We take a few moments now for individual private prayer. We will continue with Kiddush, which you can find on the inside back cover of your Divarim. As you can see, due to limited space on the bima tonight, we can't invite those with simchas to join us, but I do insist, anybody who's celebrating a simcha, stand up and tell us what it is. Come on, I want to know the simchas we've got in the congregation tonight. Tuli?
43 years old.
Ah! For the second time. Bernie? Birthday also. Good, mazel tov. What other simchas we got? Over here.
My 18th birthday.
Ah! Mazel tov. Any others?
I got my bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah day that I want.
Ah! Mazel tov. What else? Where else? Yes. Aha! He's in the tenor choir. What did you?
My daughter's the only one in the Peace Corps with a phone.
Hey. Yes, Monica, all the way in the back. Ah, okay. Any other simchas you want to share with us, Ken? Oh, mazel tov. Okay. All right. Well, we'll continue then with the kiddush and a mazel tov to all those who are celebrating a simcha tonight. You get a double cup of wine next week. Okay. Continue again on the insert on the inside back cover of your siddur.
ויחולו השמיים והארץ וכל צבאם, ויחל אלוהים ביום השביעי מלאכתו אשר עשה, וישפוט ביום השביעי מכל מלאכתו אשר עשה, ויברך אלוהים את יום השביעי ויקדש אותו, כי בו שבה מכל מלאכתו אשר ברא אלוהים לעשות.
6 days shall you labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is consecrated to the Eternal One, your God. With the fruit of the vine, our symbol of joy, we celebrate this sacred day on which cares and sorrows fade from our minds. We give thanks for life and its blessings, for work and rest, for home and love and friendship. On Shabbat, eternal sign of creation, we rejoice that we are indeed created in the image of God as we raise our cups in thanksgiving.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei Kirishanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shaba kodsho v'ahava uv'ratzon hinchilanu zikaron l'maseh תחילה למקרא קודש זכר ליציאת מצרים כי מכל Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. Chaim. I'd just like to give a formal welcome to Ben and his wife Machi, who's here tonight from Toronto. Our second Ellie and Gerald Louden musician in residence. And I'd like to especially thank our choir, who have been working long and hard to prepare both tonight's service and tomorrow night's concert. And our instrumentalists, who are so beautifully adding to tonight's worship experience. Thank you all for everything you've done in preparing for tonight. Before I give up the pulpit to Ben, who's going to share some of his thoughts and more of his music with you tonight, I want to tell you a little bit about the person who made this weekend possible, and that is Ellie Louden. Born Ellie Michelson in Germany in 1902, she fortunately made her way to the United States before World War II, where she met and married Gerald Louden. After settling in Santa Barbara, Ellie became a patron of the arts and an active member of our synagogue. She passed away almost 5 years ago, leaving behind significant gifts to the Cantorial Endowment Fund, our temple's building fund, the Beit HaYiladim preschool, as well as gifts that established a campership fund and this musician in residence weekend. These are some of the thoughts I shared at Ellie's memorial service, and I share them again tonight to bring her back into our minds. In my tenure as cantor of this congregation, it's hard to think of any one person who took up so large a space on the landscape of our synagogue. We're grateful for Ellie's generous gifts in so many areas of our temple, but it was her physical presence that made Ellie so special to all of us. In our sanctuary, we boast a finely crafted bima, a beautiful stained glass window, the Ner Tamid, and Ellie Louden, another kind of eternal light. It's the rare temple event that was not graced by Ellie's countenance. And those of you who knew her, close your eyes and picture her in your mind right now, and you can't help but smile. I miss her slow shuffle to her reserved seat at Friday night services, the embrace of her larger-than-life hand as she gave her delightfully honest critique of any topic ranging from her poor health to the performance of that night's volunteer van driver. She could be both unkind and humorous, off-putting and generous, and endearing and stubborn, all of those things. But those who penetrated her cactus-like exterior found a very colorful flower, much like the ones that she brought weekly to decorate the Oneg Shabbat tables in the social hall. Ben, Ellie possessed an insatiable love of fine music, never tiring of announcing that she was an alto in her younger days, singing at the opera, which she would generally follow with a few bars from Lohengrin in her resonant baritone voice. And Ben, I have no doubt that Ellie would have enjoyed you and your music, and if she were here tonight, she'd be sitting right there behind you, poking you with her cane to get your attention, and then sharing with you in her very heavy German accent all of the things that would make you, Ben Steinberg, a better person. So with those thoughts of Ellie Louden, and with thanks to her and to her foresight and her generosity that made all of these things possible, it's my pleasure to welcome you, Ben, to our pulpit as I give you now, Ben Steinberg, our musician in residence this weekend.
I am so sorry I never got to know Ellie Louden. Because as my wife could tell you, she's sitting here tonight, it's good that I could become a better person. First, let me thank you, all of you, for your hospitality and your welcome. People like me always dream of visiting places where the community is friendly, where the musicians are talented, and the weather is warm. Okay, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. I'm not really serious, because after leaving our 2-story igloo in Toronto, February, your beautiful city feels like a tropical island. Some years ago, I was commissioned to compose a piece for a Toronto chamber group called Trio Lira, a flute, viola, and harp. I was so impressed with this group and with their incredible musicianship, I continued the relationship and have worked with them many times since. Most recently, just a few months ago, as my chosen accompanying ensemble for a new cantata I wrote on the poetry of Yehuda Amichai, the Israeli poet. The violist of this trio, whose name is Mark Childs, kept talking to me about his wonderful nephew, a cantor whose name, coincidentally, was the same as his. I finally got to meet this cantor at the New York School of Sacred Music in his graduating year, where I was fortunate to attend one of his graduation events, a recital on Yiddish music. I so admired his presentation for its sensitivity and scholarship that I looked forward to working with him one day. Now here we are, and now I can go back and tell that violist I've met the real Mark Childs, who, let me assure you, you are most fortunate to have as one of your clergy in this congregation. I've been asked to comment on the topic of synagogue music generally before introducing the 3 pieces of tonight's sermon and song. That's a little like trying to sum up an entire history of European and Middle Eastern music, with 1960s pop songs included, in 5 minutes. In fact, I'll probably be doing just that, dealing with most of Jewish music and its history on Sunday morning. And I hope many of you will be there. That was a commercial. Synagogue music is only one part of the Jewish musical mosaic, but a very important one. I like to say that the greatest repository of all Jewish music is in the sanctuary of the synagogue, and the cantor is its keeper. The beauty and the dignity of our liturgy, our prayer texts, are best preserved through the choices of cantors like yours, and through the leadership of supportive rabbis, and ultimately through the efforts of knowledgeable congregants who encourage their cantor. There's a wonderful text from Pirkei Avot, which you will be hearing used in one of the cantatas tomorrow evening, called Aseh lecha rav u'kaneh lecha chaver. Literally, make yourself a rabbi. I believe that has a double meaning. And when I meet a rabbi in my travels and a cantor who are productive, contented people, proud of their congregation, as your clergy is, I sort of decided in my mind that this congregation maybe has found the formula, Aseh lecha rav, because clergy, if you've ever thought about it, are really made in a very strong sense by their congregation. And sensing the positive pride which both your rabbi and your cantor have in you, their congregation, I feel that probably is so here at Congregation B'nai B'rith. Cantors, like all synagogue professionals, need encouragement. I'm always fascinated by Jewish humor, which seems to chronicle all these things we talk about. For example, the story is told of the cantor who was singing at a Shabbat service, going along really quite well until he looked down on the front row. There was this little old lady, and she was sitting there, and everything the cantor sang, she shook her head. He thought maybe he had seen it wrong. He went on singing. Still the head shook. Well, he pulled out some of his highest notes, his most dramatic moments. He used his voice to great effect. Still the woman kept on shaking her head. He began to perspire. He used up every trick he had in his bag of tricks, but nothing seemed to dissuade her. Finally, at the end of the service, feeling totally dejected, he stood in the reception line as people came up to wish him a good Shabbos, and the little old lady came closer and closer. He looked down at her finally, and she looked up at him and said, "Cantor, you were marvelous." I don't know what that illustrates, but it is a Chazan story that maybe I haven't heard before, and I suppose it's an indication of the fact that cantors do need support and encouragement from their congregations, and I know yours does get that. Now, on a practical level, there can be 4 musical voices in a Reformed Jewish service today: a cantor, a choir, an instrument, and a congregation. Marginalize any of these voices and they will dry up and disappear. Cantors have to chant, they have to sing, congregations have to participate, choirs, instruments also have to have a role to play. There have always been some tensions in balancing these forces, and congregations have very strong feelings about their music. There's another old story which I won't tell because you all know it, but I will remind you of the story of the Jew who was marooned on a desert island and built 2 synagogues, and when asked why, he said, "That one I pray in, this one I wouldn't set foot in the place." That does have a lesson, I suppose. Our history can very often be enshrined not only in our humor, but also in our music, and even feelings about service music in past decades can be discovered through song. Let me give you this example. It's a Yiddish theater song from New York's 2nd Avenue. It was published in 1929, and it's called Chazonim of Probe. It's the story of 3 cantors who come to try out for a job in a synagogue. And the first cantor was an Eastern European cantor with a beautiful voice. And the committee, because this was all done in Yiddish, sat and listened to him audition. And he sang ever so beautifully. And went on from there, soaring to great heights. At the end of the audition, the committee met, and the chairman stood up and said, I'll say it in Yiddish, but you'll understand it. Das ist nicht, was der Public will. It is not what the public wants. So the second candidate came up, and he was from Germany. He was a baritone with a beautiful beard, and he got up and he sang, Tau lehodaut ladonai. Once again, the chairman stood up at the meeting and said, Das ist nicht, was der Public will. That led to the third candidate, who was dressed in a very sporty outfit, and he got up and he sang, Yismach, Yismach Moshe b'matnas chilkoi, Yismach Moshe b'matnas chilkoi klil, boo-boop-be-doop-doop, boo-boop-be-doop-be-doop. The end of the story, as you can imagine, was the chairman saying, Das ist, was der Public will. So there have always been these discussions and these tensions because congregants care very deeply about their music, not without cause, because music is a language, and it's our most eloquent language. It has a vocabulary, it has a grammar, it has an enormous literature, and it can influence people and can enhance messages. Corporate America and industry discovered that a long time ago and continues to invest untold millions of dollars in musical commercials. Supermarkets go to great lengths to play certain kinds of music as you enter the supermarket to encourage you to buy, and they change the music according to the age, the projected age of the customers. That's how important music is, and of course religion discovered it a long time before there were supermarkets. But some congregations love to listen to their cantors or choirs. Some like to sing a lot. Surely the obvious answer in various congregations is to balance these voices. There must be moments in a service when congregations can sing together. One scholar is quoted as saying that any Jew can pray individually or even in silence. A congregation must sing together or disband. But there must also be moments when a cantor interprets a text through the language of music, and when a choir or an instrument beautifies a service, using the melodic and harmonic traditions of centuries and the stylistic components of today to help a congregation pray and to teach us the messages in the sacred texts. Having said that, I want to again remind you what the rabbi told you so effectively at the beginning of the evening, and that is we have to exempt tonight's musical service from the issue of congregational participation. It's obviously a special presentation in which this congregation, not being familiar with the music, listens rather than sings. But whether our synagogue music is participative or presentational, there's a composer's role. We're usually in the background, but our role is to look afresh at the meanings and ideas of texts debated on and commented upon by scholars for centuries. And our job is to illuminate them and encourage you as a listener and as a worshiper to look at a particular text in a way you haven't done before. And you know, that's true of all art. We all see things. We see flowers on a hillside. A painter comes along and through his imagination or her response to color helps us to see a scene in a way we haven't looked at before or haven't thought of before. An author who is a master of literature can do the same thing by his or her writing. A musician tries to do that through sound. So if a musician, especially a Jewish composer, is successful, you ought to be able to look at a text, listen to a new interpretation, and say, I never thought of that before. It's true. 3 illustrations now as a sermon and song, each of which shows a different aspect of synagogue music. The first is a solo setting of Ismaku, which we sang this evening as part of the service, which was commissioned by a cantor with a bass voice who told me that because there were so many excellent tenors and sopranos in the cantorate, lower voices were being neglected. So this setting is suggestive of Hasidic style, although I remember it was performed in Washington at a concert once, and one critic described it as a jazz piece. Again, we hear what we hear. The text is an expression of affection for the Sabbath, even to the repetition of the word Shabbat, almost like a verbal caressing of the term, because the term Shabbat is not even in that text, and yet it's traditionally included and repeated. You can follow the text if you wish back in the service a little ways. This is a solo with a flute obbligato accompanied by keyboard. Ismaku.
ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג שבת ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. המקר ששבי, כולם יספרו, כולם יספרו ויתענגו מטובך. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. והשביעי רצית בו וקידשתו, והשביעי רצית בו וקידשתו שבת. חמדת ימים אותו קראת, זכר למעשה וראשית, זכר למעשה וראשית. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג שבת.
This next piece, called Ellie Divarim, I've received 2 compliments for this piece over the years, both of which I treasure. The first was by an Orthodox cantor who said, "This piece is pure nusach. The Shekhinah, the Holy Spirit, must have visited you the day you wrote this." The other was from a teenage song leader at Eisner Camp in Massachusetts who said, "Hey man, you finally wrote something for guitar." That's true. The piece is in fact built on Nusach HaTfilah, which is a body of Ashkenazic melody assigning specific tunes to specific occasions. But it does include a rhythmic chorus, which indeed is playable and accompanyable on guitar. My concern at Eisner Camp many years ago when this was written was to teach the teenagers there a little bit of chazanut, a little bit of traditional synagogue music, which I wrote, but then I knew they wanted a rhythmic chorus so that they could include a toe tapper in the piece, and I wrote a rhythmic chorus, which you'll hear in a moment. It's a traditional prayer from Birchot HaShachar, the blessings of the morning. It's a chant discussion in the study of Mishnah, the oral law, the codification of the oral law. It's a duet musically based on a Lernensteiger, a study mode. Jews through the centuries have traditionally studied to music. That's why you have certain tunes assigned to certain text, and if you sing it, you'll remember it. So there are certain modes and melodies which are called Lernensteg, or study modes. In this piece, the cello represents a third voice, or a presence. The text is beautiful. It lists our obligations as Jews, ending with Talmud Torah, study of Torah, which, Keneged Kulam, leads to all other things. And it translates as follows. These are the obligations which are so important they can't even be measured. Acts of charity, honoring one's parents, making peace between a man and his neighbor, deeds of loving kindness, but most important, the study of Torah. It's a chant discussion, and we're going to listen to it now.
Divarim shein lahem shiur.
Ha'aprea v'ha'bikurim v'harayot.
Ugemilut chasadim v'talmud Torah. Elu dvarim shein lahem shiur ha'aprea v'ha'bikur v'harayot ugemilut chasadim v'talmud Torah.
שאדם אוכל פירותיהם בעולם הזה.
והקרן קיימת לו לעולם הבא. והבת שלום בין אדם לחברו. ותלמוד תורה. אלו דברים שאין להם שיעור ההבאה והביקור והרעיון וגמילות חסדים וגמילות חסדים ותלמוד תורה ותלמוד תורה ותלמוד תורה.
Well, this is our longest piece of the three, and it has the shortest introduction. It's our final piece, and it's the signature piece of the Shomer Yisrael service. The text is what we call a piyut, an early liturgical poem. We don't know who wrote it. I'm always tempted to say it's that well-known Greek composer Anonymous, but that again is all. It's a prayer, and the prayer is a supplication to guard the remnant of God's people, that one nation which recites the Shema. Musically, it's conceived as the suppliant expression of an Ashkenazic chazan, in part adapted to include the voices of a choir and an instrumental ensemble. Shomer Yisrael.
Ben, it has been said that music is the wings on which our prayers ascend to heaven. If that be so, then your life's work has contributed to the beauty and the wonder of the prayers of the Jewish people being heard on high. We thank you for tonight, which we know is only a beginning taste of this wonderful weekend. Tomorrow evening, there are still tickets available for our special concert, although I believe the preferred seating is almost sold out. But there are still seats available. The concert begins at 7:30 tomorrow evening, and then Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Will be a brunch and a lecture presentation by Mr. Steinberg, and I do hope you will all be here. Once again, thank you so much for what you have brought to us this weekend, and it's truly a spiritual joy for us to be able to share in your creation. And now, my friends, we will continue with our service on page 148 as we all rise for the Aleinu.
לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הרצון, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני
O God, you spread out the heavens and established the earth. You are our God, there is none else. In truth, you alone are our sovereign, as it is written. Know then this day and take it to heart. The Eternal One is God in the heavens above, and on the earth below. There is none else. Eternal God, we face the morrow with hope made stronger by the vision of your deliverance. A world where poverty and war are banished, where injustice and hate are gone. Teach us more and more to respond to the pain of others, to heed your call for justice, that we may bring nearer the day when all the world shall be one, On that day, the age-old dream shall come true. On that day, O God, you shall be one, and your name shall be one.
ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ.
Our thoughts turn now, as ever they must, to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost. The martyrs of our people and all people whose lives now ended have been a blessing to humanity. If you are here this evening to recite Kaddish for a loved one, we would ask that when the name of your loved one is read, that you rise, and that following the reading of all the names, we will then rise as one congregation in solidarity with all you who mourn. And so tonight we recall those who have passed to their eternal rest only this week, as we remember the memory of Erwin Schreier, and those who have died in the past 30 days, as we recall the life of Charlotte Dorfman, and those whose yahrzeits we observe on this Shabbat: Riva Aronson Bloom, Charlotte Bernstein, Bertha Bohm, Ruth Agnes Hurt Feinstein, Sarah Geiger, Francis Gertz, Paul Ginberg, Shoshana Gutman, Gertrude Hodes, Meyer Kay, Dr. Sidney Keats, Virginia Bridge Landis, Florence Margolis, Jacob Martin, Marcia Endich Martin, Eugene Marks, Rena Mayer, Charles A. Melcher, Machlon Myers Malin, Lester Mincer, Rose Nason, Fred Ryan, Gertrude Richmond, Max Rosenthal, Gertrude Schliefer, Hanschen Schweitzer, Jack Secher, Francis Simon, Lena Stone, Arthur Sussman, Joseph Tiroler, Seymour Winner, Irving Wolf, and David Yenny. And if there are others of you here tonight who are observing Yahrzeit and whose names of whose loved ones we have not read, I would invite you to call out their names and rise as well. Then we rise now in solidarity with those who mourn as one congregation, as we join in praying for the coming of God's rule here on earth, with words hallowed by generations of Jewish faith, the words of the Kaddish prayer on page 154. Yit gadal v'yit kadash shemei rabbah v'alma divarach irutei v'amlich malchutei v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael ba'gala v'zman kariv v'yimru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mivarach le'alam u'lalmei almaya yit barach v'yishtabach v'yit pa'ar v'yit romam v'yit naseh v'yit hadar v'yit ale v'yit halal shmei tekudsha brichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'yimru amen. Yehei shlamach haba min shmaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav hu ya'aseh shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. The departed whom we remember this evening have entered into the peace of life eternal. They still live on earth in the acts of goodness they performed and in the lives of all you who cherish their memories. May the beauty of their lives continue to abide among us all as a living and loving benediction. And may the source of peace send peace to all you who mourn and comfort to all the bereaved hearts among us. And together we say, Amen. Just one additional reminder before we conclude. Saturday night, March 10th, is our second annual of what we are sure are going to be many, many annual Purim cabarets. The group of talented people in our congregation is hard at work preparing for this year's event. The invitations are going out this week, I understand, and I saw them in the office. They did get here. So look for it in your mail and plan on joining us here for a truly, truly wonderful, wonderful evening. And now, my friends, if you would please turn to page 159. We'll conclude our service with the singing of Ein Kelohenu.
Ein Kelohenu, Ein Kadonenu, Ein Kemalkeinu, Ein Kemoshienu, Mi Eloheinu, Mi Adonenu, Mi Kemalkeinu, Mi Kemoshienu, Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adonenu, Nodel Malkeinu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu. Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu, Atahu Moshienu.
Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and always protect you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. May the light of God's presence shine upon you and be gracious to you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God's presence ever be with you and grant you peace. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Oh, that's cool.
Beautiful.
Well done, everybody. Good job.
Sometimes when I'm loud, I go like this. Sort of cock my head, think about it. How they are, right? Oh yeah, we all do. All do. The populations are so large now that there are oboe players that can read for other oboe players, but even those that buy them, they can make their own. But they say, well, I like to read, yeah, I like to be good at it. Oh, you know, the only reads that I like are 25 bucks a piece. Oh, God. They'd like, you know, not a lot. One performance? Sometimes. A few. A couple. That's it. This is kind of all of it. Like in the middle, where it's like go and you yeah, I'm trying to spare some place to hold all of that. I have to have it like candy. Want me to hand it to you? No. You can wait when I'm like... You can hold them.
Excuse me, folks. I don't know if you can hear me. It's just going to take a couple of minutes more. We have a wonderful situation. We're more than sold out. So we're going to be opening up the back walls and lining in more chairs. So just give us a couple of minutes so we can get everybody seated.
That interval doing this music. Down. A lot of things down.
Welcome to all of you. Sorry for the delay. It was a problem that we didn't foresee, and it's a wonderful problem to have to set up extra chairs in the back of the room. Thank you all for coming, and welcome to all of you. And thank you for all of your interest and support of the very best of the music of our people and our liturgy. I have to tell you, it's been such a treat to work with Ben Steinberg and to get to know his music so intimately. I and our choirs have truly immersed ourselves in his compositions for almost 6 months, and I think we formed a bit of a love affair with his music. We've also raised our level of musicianship up a notch or two along the way. And those of you who were in attendance at last night's service experienced the beauty and majesty of Ben's composition, as well as the warmth, the eloquence, and humor. And Ben, I spelled humor here with an O-U at the end of the word in honor of your Canadian heritage. The humor of Ben himself. And tonight we'll continue with a sampling of Ben's work, hear more of his commentary, and enjoy the fruits of a wonderful period of hard work and preparation. And I say sampling because Ben's catalog of music is monumental. And had we had an entire week of concerts and lectures, I dare say we could not explore it all. And so, with that, it's my pleasure to welcome Ben Steinberg to Congregation B'nai B'rith.
I have to flick a switch in order to be heard here. It's a great pleasure to see you again, and in spite of the lights in my eyes, I recognize some of the faces from yesterday evening, from Erev Shabbat, and I'm delighted to see you back here. We hope that our concert pleases you. I can vouch for the fact that the choir here has worked long and hard on the materials we're going to present to you tonight. And that goes for the adult choir and the teen choir, and bless their hearts, the little ones as well, as you'll hear in the second half. Please know that they have worked hard at their preparation, and that I'm very pleased with what they've done. Now, for a composer, each piece is a little bit like a child. You fuss over it, and you rewrite it, and you try to make it as good as you possibly can, and eventually it gets published, and your pieces waddle off into the wider world just like your kids do, and you hope that they fare well. So tonight, I'm going to make a few comments to you by way of introducing our various pieces, and they will be random thoughts, sometimes associated with particular people, because every piece I've ever written is associated in my mind with the people who commissioned it and the people who have performed it over the years and the experiences I had as a composer while writing the material. We just heard a prayer for peace called Ote Shalom, and now an expression of love. Verastich li, which we're going to hear now, is written in two languages, Hebrew and English. Actually, three languages if you count music as a language, which we should. In a Jewish service, ritual drama must be accompanied by music appropriate to that drama. For example, in the Torah service, there are times when a congregation stands and sits, and the words in the text of the Torah service call for a certain kind of musical treatment. Marriage is such a ritual, and any music associated with it should express affection in a simple, a direct, and hopefully beautiful way. This text from Hosea is originally from the morning prayer a traditional Jew recites when putting on tefillin. It's a song of betrothal between man and God, here adapted as a song of betrothal between man and woman. Verastich li.
Verastich
There's a theory that in the hands of a fine performer, an instrument can speak just as eloquently as a human voice. Essa and I, Psalm 121, I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, began life as a hastily written vocal solo. A friend of mine many years ago, a Cantor, complained to me that he couldn't find a suitable setting of that text for his own voice, and he was a good friend. So I said, I said to him, speaking English but with Yiddish inclination, you'll come over for a glass tea, you'll sit down, we'll find an eitzah, we'll find an opportunity to do this. So he did, and I remember taking a paper napkin from the table and sketching out a piece for him, which turned out very well. For years, when we used that piece, we simply photocopied the napkin. Finally, it got published in New York, and we had to fill out make a proper score for it. But you know, when a cellist friend needed a Jewish work some years later for a TV appearance, I transcribed the piece, and since then it's been used widely. In the Zohar, there's a sentence which says there are halls in the heavens which open only to the voice of song. A good musician can do that for us. So here tonight it's presented as a cello solo with piano accompaniment. very different pieces of music now. One Sephardic and one Ashkenazic. One very derivative and one not. Adon Olam. Adon Olam is a medieval hymn, and it has more settings than you could possibly count or listen to in a lifetime, I think. Now, this one is from, of all places, the Isle of Durban. And Durban is an island off the Tunisian coast of Africa. It's a very interesting old community. They found refuge in Durban, this ancient Jewish community, during the Babylonian exile. And without telling you all the folk stories and legends that exist there, and there are many, there is one thing about this community which is really quite unusual, and that is that they treasure their ancient songs and their ancient music. They treasure them with a great intensity. So when you hear the community today, you're really hearing, when you listen to them at prayer and service, you're hearing melodies which are centuries upon centuries old. And I discovered them in Jerusalem, where in one part of Jerusalem there is the Durban synagogue. I attended a Shabbat morning service there, and I heard a tune which fascinated me. And I had to translate it from the Sephardic sound, which tends to obscure Western melodies as we know it. So I heard Adon Olam Hashem Alak, and from that derived that this beautiful melody, and I think I can translate that for Western ears. So I asked them to come back on a Sunday evening when it wasn't Shabbat, so I could take them singing this thing, and they were very flattered and very happy to do that. The result is a now published piece of music which is for duet and piano and flute. That's the Adon Olam based on the melody from the Isle of Durban. The second piece we're going to do is a prayer for peace, with which you may have some familiarity because I think it's been used in your services. It's called Shalom Rav, and it's become very widely used. I want to tell you that it has no derivation and no melodic reference at all. It's purely inspired by a beautiful text. First, Adon Olam.
I may, Ben, before you start. The reason why I actually asked Ben to include this piece in tonight's program, not because Ben didn't want to do it, but I think in his mind that it's such a ubiquitous piece across the continent that doesn't need a concert setting. My rationale for asking him to put this piece in the concert is, how often do we get to applaud your work?
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim
I'm fussing with this because if I leave it on while I'm conducting, you're going to get an awful lot of swishes and noises which interferes with the music. This is a very ambitious weekend of musical programming for your choir and for our musicians. And it's so ambitious that there is even a small cantata in each half of our program. So this is the smaller of the two cantatas, but it is a cantata with a very beautiful text, Atah Echad. The only way I can describe this is that it's almost a love-in for Shabbat. It is a text which is so filled with terms of endearment and affection that I think only a Jewish person can understand it. The first verse, which is set in the Magen Avot mode, and if you don't know what that means, come tomorrow morning, I'll explain it. First verse takes its text from the prologue to the Kedushat Hayom in the traditional Shabbat afternoon Mincha service. There's an allusion here to chapter 17 in 1 Chronicles, Uni Amcha Yisrael Goyechad Ba'aretz, and what one nation on earth is like your people Israel. And there are some intriguing spin-offs of ideas in this text which are reflected in the music and I wish we had time to follow tonight. But in the second section, written in a minor key, the patriarchs rejoiced in the Sabbath. It was an early rabbinic idea. But most importantly is the mood demanded by the key words, Abraham Yagel, Abraham rejoiced, Yitzchak Yeranen, Isaac sang, Yaakov uvanem yanuchu bo, Jacob and his children were refreshed by its rest. The Sabbath is described as containing menuchat emed be'emunah, and so on, a peace made up of truth and faithfulness and serenity, a fullness of tranquility given to us as a gift by the Almighty. And the third section, in a major key, is a prayer that our young who follow us should understand and know that our Sabbath joins us to God, and that it's by our observance of the Sabbath that we revere God's name. Now that's a beautiful text because in a way it sums up the other two verses. A free translation of the Hebrew is read by our narrator, Craig Rosen, preceding each of the three movements.
You are one, and your name is one, and there is none like your people Israel, a people unique on all the earth. A garland of glory have you given us, a crown of salvation, a day of rest and holiness. Abraham rejoiced in it. Isaac sang. Jacob and his children were refreshed by its rest. In this rest are love and sharing, truth and faithfulness and peace, quiet and safety. It is the perfect rest that you have willed.
Avraham Yagel, Yitzchak Yiranel, Yaakov Uvana,
May your children come to know and understand that this same Sabbath rest, which is so precious to us, links them to you, and that by observing it they may hallow your name.
We close this part of the program with a Hasidic Negoon. This was written for my own congregational choir many years ago. They happen to like Hasidic Negoonim. And it's done very often by groups in concert and recordings, often non-Jewish choirs. It always fascinates me to hear them do this because they describe these words as nonsense syllables. But Hasidic Negoonim do not contain nonsense syllables. They contain bims and boms and idididais, but they have meaning. You know, a simple bim can contain questions about the meaning of life itself. And the answers of depth and philosophy and faith sometimes are all wrapped up in a single bum. This piece is conceived as a series of Hasidic conversations between two soloists, between soloists and choir, among the sections of the choir, and between the choir and instruments in which the choir gets the last word.
Almost. We've got to find a better method of this, shall we?
my favorite key. I mean, I think that the real thing is, but there are some things that work well for certain stuff, and if you really know, yeah, like on how the notes connect to each other and which how they flow. No, it's like Tchaikovsky wrote his fourth symphony in F minor, and there's solos in the that has it's got 5 flats. F minor? Well, it's got 4 flats. It's got 4 flats. A flat, B flat. B flat and D flat. Oh, right. It's got 4 flats. And because it's got all of these things in the flow, like through the instrument, it comes from notes all coming out down here, so that there's more resistance, and it makes this connection that where it flows better. So if you like really know what they do, and it works. And there's this beautiful solo. It's this beautiful solo because it works right. Because of the way that works. You wouldn't sound like that in another.
Just like a very happy coincidence of both the tone of that piece as well as the key.
I don't know the answer. Nathan, do you think that?